I'm Matt Dixon, and welcome to the Purple Patch Podcast. The mission of Purple Patch is to empower and educate every human being to reach their athletic potential. Through the lens of athletic potential, you reach your human potential. The purpose of this podcast is to help time-starved people everywhere integrate sport into life. I get the privilege of welcoming one and only Stephanie Go to the show. Thank you very much for joining us, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm flattered.
You are a long-time Purple Patch athlete. You haven't been able to escape. You're trying to find the hatch, but we've had our claws into you for a long time right now.
I've happily stayed.
I don't want to I don't want to set you up with more pressure, but the reason I wanted to have you on the show is that over the last years, if I think of the epitome of what it means to be a Purple Patch athlete, of an optimized athlete, time starved, but getting great personal performance in the broadest spectrum of performance. We're not just talking about race results, which we'll get into a little bit as well, but winning across all aspects. I would be hard pressed to find anyone's name that would come above your name as a Purple Patch athlete, and so I'm going to set you up with that and put a little pressure on your
A lot of
shoulders.
pressure.
It is, but I think that over the course of the next half an hour or so that we have a nice chat here, I think that your journey, your approach, your mindset, and everything, listeners can really draw from and apply to hopefully their own journey to help them improve and win across all aspects of life, not just sports performance. And so, if you're ready and your seatbelt is fastened, shall we rock and roll?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, as you know, as a podcast listener, we always start with our guests learning a little bit about you. So why don't you just give the listeners a little bit of a grounding of who is Stephanie, your upbringing, where you grew up, your family now, education, and everything that sort of shaped you as a person.
Sure. So I'm Stephanie. I grew up here in Portland, Oregon. I was the oldest of three kids. My parents had extremely high academic expectations of us. I kind of always knew I wanted to be a doctor. I don't think I knew of any other things that you could do in life. So my specialties changed. I was going to be a neurosurgeon and ER doc, and
Wow.
I just knew that I would excel academically. I was always very active. Our family was pretty well rounded socially, athletically, academically, but I would have classified myself as very much kind of a nerd, not really an athlete. I was very, perfectionist, very critical of myself and other people. I was very like A type. I really hated anything that I wasn't good at. I didn't have a lot of tolerance for not being like the best at something. I just
Hmm.
kind of would veer away from it. So, um, that was me as a kid. And, now as an adult, I did become a doctor. I ended up going from undergrad straight to med school. I moved down to California. I was at Stanford for residency and fellowship. I'm a radiologist, and I'm now the president of a physician owned private practice here in Portland. I met my husband actually when I was down in California. He happened to be from Portland. Um,
Oh,
and which was an easy choice to move back to Portland, and be close to family. So now we've got two kids, a 2.5-year-old and a 4-year-old, four and three quarters. I would be in trouble to not mention the three quarters.
absolutely. Yeah.
And we just adopted a dog. So we've got a pretty busy life now, but with family around, we have a great support system. And Evan and I, having grown up here, we've got a lot of friends from different phases of our life, and we're just so I've got something going on. So
You're living the American dream. Well, we have to get into sports because you self-declared your nerdery growing
yeah,
up, and
yes.
you weren't overly athletic. You're darn athletic now. So let's talk about sports a little bit, and I guess you, I'm assuming you did sports in school, things like PE, yeah. But did you do any active, sports so far as teams at all growing up, or?
Yeah, we did. I did actually a lot of team sports. Like tried all sorts of things from ballet, ice skating. I'm still a pretty avid downhill skier.
Mm.
I tried snowboarding for a while when that was the cool thing to do in middle school. But really, what stuck for me most was soccer and some basketball. The team sports were a big social aspect of our life, also. And so, my grandma used to say, like, "You're the jack of all trades, master of none." And my parents, like, "Leave her alone, like, let her try what she wants. You got to finish the season. We signed up for the whole session. You're going to, see it through, even if you hate it." But
Yeah.
ultimately, soccer was what followed me all the way through. And I ended up playing through high school. I played varsity. I started. So I wasn't a terrible athlete, but I knew there was just no way that I was going to play in college. I knew I wanted to focus on, my studies. And so that was kind of like Stephanie had fun. I was active. I was out there, but I was not the star of the team. I was not sending, video of myself to college recruits, even to play at like a D3 school.
Yeah.
Um, but then I got to college and all of a sudden I didn't have any organized sports. And that was like a loss of structure that I hadn't realized I needed, or that my life was really revolved around. You didn't think about going to work out. You just went to practice and your friends were
Yeah.
doing that. And my friends from soccer were, my social life. So I was at University of Oregon. And if anyone's ever been to Eugene, it's a pretty great place to pick up running.
Yeah.
And
There is a little bit of running history
there
out
there
of
is
Eugene.
some history there. And so, Hayward Field was literally across from my dorm. And back in the day, it wasn't this, incredible, stadium. You could just like step over the fence and just go jog around the track. So I kind of needed this outlet. I was pretty stressed. I was pre med. I was like very high strung. I was worried about, getting good grades. And I needed something else to do. I had also gained like 25 pounds. So we'll just add that in there. I wasn't like at my healthiest
Mhm.
or my happiest. So, I started seeing some tangible progress. At first, I was running like 10-minute miles, maybe like 9:30 if I was really pushing it for 3 miles. And I kind of got addicted to this runner's high. And you can really see like a very measurable progress,
Mhm.
if you're running the same route every day. And so that's kind of where I got hooked. And then I got to medical school, and like, if you're not stressed already, well, now you are.
Yeah.
So I said, let's just run a marathon. Like, let me just do one to say I've done it. Um, it took me 4 hours and 23 minutes. I didn't drink any water until mile 20 because it was cloudy here in Portland. I didn't think I needed it, which tells you kind of like where I was on the prepared, side.
Yeah.
Thought I would die, and once the cramps had subsided, I said, "Okay, like, I think I can break 4 hours if I train with a plan and some water." Um, so, my intern year, I finally broke 4 hours, and it was like, wow, you can see this measurable gain, when you make changes, and so I kinda just kept putting forth this new arbitrary time goal, trying to bring it down. The point though was that I was getting hurt a lot. I would finish the cycle, I would have like a stress fracture, or I would just have, these pains that would put me out at the end of the race for like another few months, and then I would come back and try to hit it hard again. So I wasn't totally thriving when it comes to that. It was either like, studying, working, or training for this thing outside of work in order to feel like I had some
Mhm.
control, over my life. So, after medical school, I moved down to Palo Alto. I went to Stanford, and that campus now, if you want to talk about perfect running weather, I mean, I know you talk about like, Studio One in sunny San Francisco, but like the South Bay is really where it's at, Matt, in terms
Yeah.
of perfect weather
There's
all
a
year
reason I
round.
live in Marin, by the way.
Yeah.
We get to enjoy the weather up there, so yeah, I feel your heartbeat.
Yeah. So, I just kept shaving a little time off though, and I kept getting hurt. But that
Mm.
was sort of my focus, and I just kept going forward with it because I didn't really know any other way. So
And how about, because you're also a triathlete now as well, so when did that bubble up? Was it an antidote to the injuries? Did you expand? What was the catalyst for you getting into triathlon?
a little bit of thinking that's the hardest thing I can think of to do.
Yeah.
I in 2016, I qualified for my first Boston, and that was something that was completely, I mean, untouchable to me when I
Mhm.
started. That was like 45 minutes, of cutting off time. Um, and so, with the qualification cycles, that meant I wouldn't be eligible to run until April of 2018, which is like over a year of not really having a goal or a plan, and
Yeah.
I just don't do well without something to look forward to. So, I was like, "What's the craziest thing I could do?" As, like, a one-time check it off the bucket list, you're never gonna do it again, and I was like, "An Ironman, obviously," right? Like, that to me is never something I would dream of, and so I kinda asked around. I had a friend who was an ultra marathoner who was friends with Mario, who was friends with Mikey, and they were like, "We have this, club that we think, this program that might be a good fit for you." So, like, right after that BQ, I had an onboarding call with Mikey, and after talking to him, he's like, "Oh, yeah, I totally get the running, and I totally get the injuries." I was like, "Okay, I think this is my plan." Like,
Mhm.
I had never cross trained in my life, and suddenly, like, cross training was gonna be, like, the focus because the biking and the swimming was, so important. And I will say I did have an accidental triathlon. I did sign up for Lake Donner, with a bunch of CrossFit friends, and they were all gonna do the sprint or the Olympic, and I was like, "How hard can it be?" Like, I can run a marathon, I can definitely run a half marathon. So I signed up for, like, the 70.3 distance, and I absolutely died.
Mm.
Like, second to last overall. My friend Brooks came behind me, but I was literally, like, the last woman, like, hobbling across the line as they were picking up the course, and that was not a fun place to be. I'd never done a brick. It was horrible. I showed up, I didn't know I needed a wetsuit. Like, it was every mistake you could make was me, and I laugh about it, but I was not having fun.
It
So,
and for listeners that don't know, that race is a long time race, but it's in the sort of foothills very close to Lake Tahoe, so you're up at altitude as well, yeah?
altitude and the bike is hilly.
It's a straight
Like,
up a
it's
mountain pass,
yeah.
basically.
This is, like, before I had a Garmin, this is before Strava existed, this is I went back to look at the results, they don't even post them anymore, that race is so old. I mean, this was so long ago, but I was very far at the end, and my husband, who was then my new boyfriend at the time, definitely remembers that.
Actually, my wife Kelly did that race. That was her sort of one triathlon, and had a similar experience. So we'll have to go back and compare
We should
times.
have
But she
yes,
was
yes, we should definitely do
she was
that
like,
together
"Oh my
again.
goodness me!" So a big thread that's really running through our conversation today is time starved, and you are the epitome of a time starved athlete. You got a highly dynamic life, and so I thought it'd be nice just if you could give listeners a glimpse of all of the competing demands that you're juggling week to week. I mean, perhaps it's pretty obvious, but work, family, life responsibilities. Hey, give a little glimpse.
So, I mean, I think most people know hospitals don't close, after the hours of 5 p.m. They don't wait until 8 a.m. to open. Emergencies pop up. You need holidays, weekends, nights. So I have a pretty variable schedule and it changes from day to day. It changes from week to week. I can't say like I'm off every Thursday or I know like I have a standing meeting at this time. My schedule comes and I look at the days, I look at the months, and they're just going to be all over the map and you're going to get what you're going to get. And a lot of that depends on what my partners are doing or what other, demands people have. Um as the president, of we were about 16 people in our group. We're not big enough to have like a CEO or anything. So that's sort of my role. I'm HR, I'm scheduling, I'm the president, I'm strategy and we've got a couple other partners helping, but um, when things pop into your lap and there's an issue and there's a contract renewal or a negotiation or a new book of business pops up, like that's for you. If the lawyer needs feedback on on an issue, like that's for you. So I will get pulled in many different directions throughout the day. And sometimes I'll have a board meeting that goes till 10 and then I got to be at the hospital for a meeting at 7. That's the reality of it. I try really hard to not let that bleed into my personal life to any extent that I can draw a boundary on time or, prioritizing like this can wait versus like, sorry, I have to take care of this call immediately. So my husband's great. He also has a full-time job, but he does carry a lot of the burden with school drop off, pickup, making the kids lunches, getting them to where they need to be. He does our grocery shopping. He does the cooking. Like we really try to delegate some of the household tasks. My kids have their own soccer, gymnastics, dance, swim lessons. I
Yeah.
don't want to ever say that my life gets in the way of them participating. My parents never, did that to us, and I want to provide them with those opportunities. It's also really important to Evan and I that we like eat dinner as a family and that we're both present at bedtime. Like stories, songs, that's all something that takes an hour and a half, 2 hours
Yeah.
by the time you get, the bedtime routine and the hostage negotiation with, like the kids, to cooperate. So those times are really blocked out for me as non-negotiable. Those are important to us. They kind of like run you know, the basis of our lives, and everything else needs to fit in around that. Um, with extended family in town, we have family dinners with my parents and my siblings every Sunday. And so we really try not to skip out on any of those things. We try to have a social life too. So if you add that in, some nights are taken up by that. So it's everybody knows like your schedule fills up a lot faster than you think it will, and you really have to kind of know, what's important to you. What can I cut? What can I trim? What can I move? And every Sunday, Evan and I are sitting there looking at the week, saying, what do you have? What do I have? What can give? Um, can I like phone it in on this meeting and do this on a bike, or probably not? Like I need to
Yeah.
participate, or I need to, to present. And he's got his own race calendar. He's a cyclist, and mine doesn't take priority, right? Like we both want to come in as equals and show up for each other. So add that, and then add like kids getting sick, right? And like not being at school and
All the other things that yeah, but beyond all of the family side of stuff, when you think about you professionally, we have, you know, a host of sort of C-suite type folks that are listening here, but this is small business owner, CEO, you know, it is, highly active as well. You're not just sitting there and telling people what to do. It's sleeves rolled up, real work. I mean, this is a universal blizzard of high demands, and you are colliding it with being very, very present and engaged with family. This is the epitome. So what I want to do is, and I we did some research for this. We wanted to
Is
I
it
wanted to try.
researching or is it stalking?
It's stalking. It is a little bit of stalking. I just want to read a couple of things out because I think that the stats that like paint the real picture here, and then we can dig into a little bit of the how and the mindset and the perspective. So we did a little look back, and I'm going to read some of your results from last year, and so this is important for for listeners to really hone in on. This is what you accomplished in 2024. The second you were at Beastman 70.3, so Pacific Crest. You were the second female overall. You were the first amateur female. You were fourth at Ironman 70.3 Oregon in your age group, and you actually shaved 30 minutes off of your 2021 bike split, and you qualified to Taupo, the Worlds. You were fifth in your age group at Ironman Canada, and qualified to the Hawaii Ironman. And I'm going to come to the hours right now on that. Only two of your training weeks leading up to that race were north of 10 hours. So pause there because this is we always talk about a purple patch athlete and very busy time starved when we look at on average is between 10 and 11 hours for Ironman athletes, sometimes 11 to 12 hours. Plenty of people do that, but only two of your training weeks were north of 10 hours. You got fifth in your age group. You qualified to the Hawaii Ironman. Chicago Marathon. You started our story with 4 hour and 23 minute. I think marathon. You did 3 hours and 22 minutes at the Chicago Marathon, and you had a really great World Championship down in New Zealand. Absolutely fantastic. So that's the results. That's the outcomes, which of course is great and celebratory and it's fantastic. Your average hours that you trained, I'm not sure if you know this, your average hours that you trained across the weeks of training in 26.25. You averaged just over 6 hours a week of training. That's, you had many weeks. This is what my eyes were Googling here a little bit. They were looking up many weeks, 4 to 5 hours a week. And as I mentioned, just a few weeks over 10 hours. So this is an optimized mindset here. And so given all of that and that training load, how does it feel to be such an immense disappointment to myself and the Purple Patch community? So
Oh my goodness. I'm pretty self-critical, so don't worry. If you've been disappointed by me, I've been more disappointed. Um, I actually was on the podcast before, like, years ago
Yeah,
because, I was the subject of, failure. I was, like, the case study on what happens when you fail. I had an absolutely horrific blow up at the Boston Marathon. I ended up in the medical tent. I talked my way out, and I remember coming to you and Mikey at the time and just being like, "This was an absolute disaster." But then I did make it back as the word of the week because I did rebound, and I came back with a marathon PR 2 months after that, and I BQ'd again. So I redeemed myself, but yeah, I've seen a lot of ups and downs, being with Purple Patch and, like, results-wise. So
yeah,
those are all, like, wonderful. They have not been the story of my journey, consistently. That's kind of a newfound success for me. And I actually did not know that I was only training, that many hours a week because I feel like the planning that I put into it to, like, make those things happen
yeah, and
takes
it's
more.
and look, let it be a platform of confidence, of, like, keep doing what you're doing, but, it's look, and the message is not 6, 7, 8, 9 hours a week is the dream training for like, otherwise a professional athlete would be doing that, but it really does show that when you can weave consistency and you keep the body really healthy and you layer it over years, it becomes a part of your life, you really can be successful. But, I guess, so many people listening will assume that you just have to. In fact, just this morning, one of my athletes texted me and said, "Oh, I'm training 7 hours a week. What's the minimum that I can do to get ready for an Ironman?" And I said, "Well, that's about that. Sometimes you're gonna wanna go higher, but for you, if you can really be consistent at 7 or 8, we can get you there on that." And so, um, how do you make it all work? Like, give from your perspective as an athlete, with this perception that understandably athletes have, I've got to train more, more, more. I've got to find a way to cram 14, 16, 18, 20 hours a week, whatever it might be. How does it work for you?
Well, for me, it's I obviously have a hard cap, right? Like my priorities are like my family, my job. Those are like way up there. That's what pays my mortgage. That's what keeps our life running. Like I can't
Yeah.
cut those things. So for me, it doesn't really help to say like, well, you must put in 20 hours a week or else like I can't get you there. Then I would just say this is not the right program for me. Like that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Or if that is what you need me to do, it would come at great cost to the rest of my life. And then like, where are we? That's just never going to work. So, you know, you might say like it's only 4 to 5 hours a week, but for me, those are like really concentrated 4 to 5 hours. I mean, that's like that's an hour on velocity on the bike
Mm.
platform, and if anyone has done, like, the, big VO2 interval workout, and you've done that for an hour, like, you don't finish that being like, "That was like me getting onto my trainer and watching Netflix for 2 hours and spinning at Z2 and maybe adding in some Z3, like, climbs over a volcano and chasing an avatar." Like, they are really concentrated workouts.
Yeah, they
Or,
are.
like, that's an hour on the treadmill that I did hill repeats, and I hit very specific inclines and very specific speeds, and, like, I really got my meat and potatoes in that time frame. Um, so I think unless you've, like, experienced some of the purple patch, workouts, you might not look at that as very much, but that's, an hour a day for 4 or 5 days out of the week, which to me is, like, pretty darn consistent when
Yeah.
I think of everything else happening. Um, it's not like I went 1 week at 10 hours, the next week at 0, the next week at 20, the next week at 2. I mean,
Yeah.
I think one of the big things that I took away early, in my time at Purple Patch, and it came up during one of the, like, Thanksgiving podcasts, and it was like, "What do I do around the holidays?" When you've got a lot of time demands and family and you're traveling, and you had said, "Look, you're better off going out and getting just, like, these small consistent bites of work done than you are not doing anything for a week and then saying like, "I gotta go for like a 10-mile run because I've
Yeah.
eaten all this and I feel terrible, and so like I gotta try to cram it all in and make it all up." And I tried to really use that as like, okay, we're laying down the habit, right? Like some of the hardest things are just like putting on your shoes, getting out the door, carving out that time in your schedule to like go do it. And that can be like the biggest barrier to getting the workout done. Not that you don't have the time, but that you don't have the ability to mentally get over that hurdle that like this is part of my daily routine. So, you try to remember like you're not going to make or break a race in like a single week. So if you can only get 4 to 5 hours in or you can only get 7 hours in, then fine, do those 7 hours and do them really really well. Like make sure
Yeah.
you're really getting like bang for your buck and keep putting those in over time. Like I've been with Purple Batch since 2016 now, and we are seeing those results here in, 2024, 2025. And I'm like I'm older. I'm 39, almost 40. I have 2 kids and a busier career than I did when I was, in residency and medical school. So I think it really shows like if you layer these things on slowly instead of trying to like drink from a fire hose and get somewhere, like out over your skis, then there is like a very good staying power to it. Um, and I think, my goal is to stay at that 4 or 5 hours every week as a baseline so that if I do decide I want to jump into something, I'm not doing like a couch to 5K or couch to marathon plan.
Yeah, exactly.
I've like maintained this habit and I've maintained this baseline fitness. And it doesn't mean I'm doing like brick workouts every week, it just means like I'm trying to like keep my body in motion. And I think doing that over the long run has really helped like absorb some of the more specific training when I do a race build.
A couple of things I want to reinforce there that I think are really important with what you had. The first would be integration. Like it's the it, this for you to have this habit. I love the fact that you're using this word habit. It's integration. Like you have a lot of very very important non-negotiables in your life, family and everything across work. But the exercise side of it, the training side of it, is not some afterthought or luxury or bolt on. It's actually integrated into your life as a necessity to help you thrive on that. And by the way, when you layer that over time and time and time, then you start to get the results from it. And I think that's very important. The
Yeah.
second thing I was going to say, sorry, and then I'll let you answer. Sorry, is just for listeners, when capacity shrinks as far as time availability, you can't just shrink the program, you layer on intensity. And so if you do have a week of 4 hours, make it count. And that tends to be a much higher ratio of high intensity training than if someone had 30 hours. And that is so it's not the that's where sort of the mythical 80/20, or not mythical, there's nothing wrong with 80/20, but just it doesn't scale in the same way. You want to, if you only do have 4 or 6 or 8 hours, you're going to have more high intensity to get the performance yield, and that's something that you've really integrated and taken on very very well. So those are my two big reinforcement points.
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, like it's hard for me, right? I look at my friend's Stravas, you look at your friend's Instagram, and you're like, oh my God, they did like a 2.5 hour ride this weekend and then they ran and like, oh my God, look, they have a kid too. And like, I know she's busy. And you just get into this like, but I haven't done that in my training program. And it just doesn't really help you. Like you can
Yeah.
spiral pretty fast on that game of like how much is enough. And I think just in general, and I'm guilty of this, we have this very productive culture, right? Of like, like more, if some is good, more is better. And
Yeah.
for me, that was obviously not the case with marathons because more running led to more injuries. And I think you just like on the x axis of how much time and why, in terms of like, how well you perform, like, yes, there's a slope and then it plateaus and then it like bottoms out when it just like is no longer effective and it's actually harmful. And when you had talked about, I think Sammy is the
Yeah.
name.
Psalm of the bull.
Yeah, and he, had this, like, comment that was, like, "I want you to get me to, like, 80% of my potential on, like, 70% of the training time," I don't know what the percentages were.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my god, that's genius." Like, that is what everybody should be trying to do. Like, that is really winning the game of life, right? Is
It is.
how do I get better results with more efficiency? And I loved that, and I've always really tried to, like, embrace that, knowing that maybe my 4 to 5 hours isn't gonna get me first place in my age group, but, it's gonna allow me to, like, have some success and still have the rest of my life stay intact and, like, really thrive. Um, in terms of, like, is this a necessary part of life? The answer is yes, and if you just ask Evan, my husband, what happens when Stephanie doesn't exercise,
Mm.
he'd probably just give you this look like, I'm not gonna say it because she's gonna, like, bite my head off, but, I'm not a very nice person. I get pretty grumpy. My kids know that I'm grumpy. I'm, shorter with people at work. I feel agitated. Like, I need that outlet. I want that time for myself. And, like, that intensity feels good to me. Like, it really, like, is a
Yes,
positive,
it's your
like.
gasoline for life. It's coming back to your point around the emotional side of it. Of there always needs to be more. It's funny when you record these shows, and quite often I draw on conversations that I've had today or yesterday. And yesterday I was having a conversation with a an athlete of mine. He's a wonderful guy, and he was a CEO, and he's getting ready to do his first Ironman. And so his first obvious question is, how much training do I need to do? And he's looking at his calendar, and he's thinking up. And so I just asked him a question. I said, okay, you're CEO of a company, and it's a major company. I said, how many times in your life in work have you finished your work week and you thought, I got everything done? Like I couldn't do anything else. He said, never. I said, that is the journey of an endurance athlete. You will never feel like enough is enough. Like if you do a huge week, you'll still feel like more. So you need to shift the mindset. And for him, that was a really critical moment because he suddenly realized, hang on, I'm in danger of just layering, layering, layering. And then logically, the net result, as you talked about it, it becomes actually inhibiting. So sometimes we can draw from other aspects of a life and realize, hang on, we are hardwired like this as highly ambitious human beings. And that's a road trap. So it's not healthy, it's not beneficial. So shift it. We do ultimately have control over that, which I think is very important.
Yeah, I mean, I think another thing that helps me, I mean, I have the advantage of having been with the program for a long time, so I really trust it.
Hmm.
And like, what helps me make cuts, like, I'm not just like looking at the plan and being like, okay, I'm just going to pick 4 to 5 random workouts and just fit them in because they happen to be placed here, like in my baseline plan when I look at training peaks. I'm looking at them and they're labeled as key or supporting, and that is like, well, right there, if it says supporting, it's gonna get deleted off my calendar, and I'm not gonna feel bad about it because somebody else has already made the decision for me on a coaching level that that's supporting. That's if you have the time, do it, and if you don't have the time, then take it off.
Yeah.
And the days where I know, like, okay, I'm gonna be able to get this done, I'll put a key session there. If I think like, oh, there's like a 90% chance this day's gonna go sideways, or I'm gonna be exhausted and I can't get it done in the morning, then I'll put something that's not quite as, high priority there. So I think you can set yourself up for success by making sure that you have planned it correctly at the beginning of the week. There is still like a purpose and a progression in those 4 to 5 hours
Yeah.
or 7 hours or whatever it is. And like you said, it's a lot of quality over quantity. So if it's just like go out for this like relaxing, mindless, Z1, Z2 run and add some walk breaks, I might not do that one. But I will do the one with the hill intervals, and I will do the one with like the race pace in there. And those things are pretty important to me. And sometimes it means like also just trimming it. So if the bike workout is an hour and 20, time rich, but it's an hour time starved, and the brick is 30 minutes time rich and 20 minutes time starved, then it's a no-brainer. I'm going to do the time starved version of the bike workout, and maybe I'm only going to do 10 minutes of the brick. But
Yeah.
I'm going to
Exactly.
jump on the treadmill and just like get those first couple miles out of your legs, right? Like
Exactly.
that's where you're really kind of like feeling that turnover and getting that benefit, and just not being super attached like it's all or nothing.
Yeah, and it's not just I need to chase this time or it's a failure.
Right, or I need to check the box because if I check the box, something magical happens, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's not the case. So, and this is not to, like, like, rag on anybody who is putting in 10 to 15 hours. Like, I mean, good
No,
for
it's
you.
great.
You should
Yeah.
be getting the most out of your 10 to 15 hours, but if you don't have it, which I'm sure many people don't, you also shouldn't feel guilty, and you shouldn't think that you're, like, not doing enough to participate, you know? Like, there's no, like, barrier to entry here.
No, that I think that's a really sage point, an important point. And You lead me down a path actually, and for listeners, you sort of you reference this, but you're not coached individually at Purple Patch, and you're a Tri Squad member, so you draw on the benefit of the whole Purple Patch team, and also the community. So I want to sort of expand that because and I shouldn't say we are very hot and heavy at Purple Patch. The success isn't just about that training plan. We've spent the first part of our conversation talking about the workouts because that really is very, very tangible. But it's really I believe in setting athletes up for success with the sort of more global whole performance system. And I know that in your journey, you've sort of leveraged a lot of those aspects when we think about fueling, sleep, recovery, etc. So I just love your perspective on those, how you've prioritized them, different aspects of what's the role of some of that education and focus on those elements to help you both stabilize energy, enable you to be present, but also give you performance gains in your sport.
Sure. So I think, some of like growing up as a female athlete in the 90s, you think a lot about body image and kind of like relationship with food, and
Hmm.
race weight would always come up. And I was not, like a high school or collegiate runner who really had those pressures. Nobody talked about it really in soccer, but you hear about it, right? Like Runner's
Yeah.
World would regularly have things about what's your ideal race weight. I mean, like it's hard to kind of separate yourself from that. And I was trying to lose like 25 pounds coming off of college. And everybody talked about all the things you shouldn't do, like all the things you shouldn't eat. And now there's this talk about like what you should fuel with, like
Hmm.
you can't go out and do what I did in the marathon and not drink water, and like eating something while running was like the most bizarre thought to me. And so, I did sign up for Fuel In, and at first it's just been like a just see where you are. Like get the information, because what you think
Hmm.
you're eating and what you are eating is different. And somebody told me like you might not be tracking, but your body is tracking. So
That's
you can either
great.
take the information, or you can just like, you know, pretend that you're on the right track. And I found I was so protein deficient. Like what I
Really.
thought of as like a lot of protein was maybe like half of what I was supposed to be eating. And yeah, it was like half. So, and in my mind, I was like, well, I'm like an endurance athlete. I need all these carbs. And like, I was just not getting enough protein.
Mm, very
So
common.
that's been a big thing. The other thing, talking about disappointment to you, disappointment to myself, I really felt like I had like 10 minutes on my run in New Zealand that I should have gotten back, even with warm weather. And I kind of tried to do this postmortem on it, and I think I was underfueled on the bike.
Mm,
Has been pointed out. He was like, when I picked up your bike, you had like an entire bottle that you hadn't gotten to.
mm.
That's like a lot of calories left there.
Yeah.
And so Brad and I had a chat. Brad and I had a coaching consult to kind of, look at my race. And he was like, I want you to really think about over the winter in this sort of off season, like what can you do this next season that is going to be a good supporting habit? Like, can you think about your sleep? That doesn't add any more time to your schedule.
Yeah.
Can you think about like what you're eating? That's not adding more time in terms of training hours. Um, and then my project for the winter was like, can I get more weightlifting back? Can I find a little time for that?
Yeah.
So, two of the three goals I had didn't take up, any more of my schedule. It was just like putting your conscious attention to it and
Yeah,
thinking,
putting some intention behind it almost.
yeah, I mean, I used to really do well on little sleep when I was younger. And then I survived on little sleep when my kids were babies. And, they're still waking up in the middle of the night. So there's some element I don't control, but going to bed earlier is something that I can do, right? Like
Mm,
turning off your phone and like don't doom scroll in bed, like pick up a real book and read it, and go to sleep at a reasonable hour. Those are things that are important. And I didn't really plan for those types of things when I was younger. I think I got away with it maybe, but at almost 40, I feel it. So those are things that I think like I wouldn't have thought of. I thought Brad was going to come at me with like, maybe you should focus on your bike, or maybe you need to add, more of this to your run. And that was like none of what his feedback was for me. Um, so it's helpful to have some of that perspective, and it's helpful to have those resources. But yeah, I think the squat in general is good because, tracking my food intake is not something that is like second nature for me. And so talking to other people who have been with Fuelin for longer or, how do you use it? Or like, what are you like using for your meals? Or what are your
Mhm.
favorite snacks? Those things are helpful. So you're not just trying to like navigate this from scratch. Cause quite honestly, like that's brain work that I just don't want to do.
You don't have, and yeah, broaden that, 'cause I mean, you've had interactions with probably almost every purple patch coach, and there's I can't help as a lot of folks will look at squad, and I wanna make sure that we don't dance into the territory of making it like an advertorial for the squad program, 'cause we're trying to be really helpful for people here, but people do look at that squad program and think, "Oh, it's just generic." And yet you're someone that's interacted with almost every purple patch coach, if not all of them, but also the broader purple patch community. I know in our private hub, and it really sounds like, as you're saying there, that's been a big part of the, pardon the pun, fuel behind like a lot of your decision making and some of the confidence in that. Do you feel like that's had a really positive impact?
Yeah, I think it's really nice. Like I have gotten, I mean, from the hub of like discussions, I've done everything from ask people really stupid questions. Like, I mean, you can ask a question like, "Hi, I'm new to triathlon. Like, am I supposed to wear this padded pair of shorts under my wetsuit?" Like,
Mm.
no one's gonna laugh at you. To
Yeah.
anything like, I'm planning on using the sauna protocol for Kona, and I'm trying to figure out, can you use an infrared the same way that you can use a traditional sauna? Like, what's the research out there? Like, is it just as effective? And people will give input. Or it's like, I'm looking at these different races. Like, how easy is it to bring my family? Like, is there anything for kids to do? And then connecting with people like Les Fisher is up in Penticton. He was there. At Ironman Canada, and he actually recognized me coming in through like one of the aid stations where he was volunteering, and I was like really losing faith on some of these out and backs where you're like, oh my god, I just want to be done. Like I can see it, and they're making me go out and back again. And he was like, "Go, Stephanie, go!" And I just like got this new life, and I was like, "Who's saying that? Like, where are you? Like, does it say my name on my bib?" I was so confused, and he was like, "Where Purple Patch goes, Purple Patch knows." And I was like, that just made me so happy. It carried me through, like, the last out and back, and then I was, like, thanking him, as I was coming through at, like, mile, like, 23.
Fantastic.
I got to swim with another Purple Patch athlete, before that race. I've met up with some of the guys who live in the Portland area, like, just to meet up, and they were gonna go for a bike ride, and they were great. They were like, "You've got kids, let's come to you. We'll go ride in Forest Pike Park, near where you live, and then you can jet off and take your kids to their swim lesson." Like, and so now we have this text thread, of people getting to, like, meet up in real life. So, it's really nice to know that you're not just, like, on the internet, just, like, Googling in
Mhm.
random chat rooms. Like, it's like a curated group. It's kinda moderated by coaches who could step in and be like, "Hey, that's, like, terrible advice," or like, "Hey, this is how I would
Which
handle."
does happen sometimes, yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
but you're not
That's
like,
not so
you're
good.
not just getting like Joe Schmo out there who's like, "Oh, I put in, like 20 hours of training and,
Yeah.
like you have to be able to put out, a minimum of
Mhm.
250 watts for 3 hours in order to like be successful at this distance." And you see advice like that,
Yeah.
like you see advice like that. And if I were just starting, I'd be like, "What in the world?" Like this is like
Mm.
too much to sort through. So
Yeah.
I enjoy that it's like a useful source. There's like educational material that I reference. Like I said, the sauna protocol I'm totally gonna use.
Mhm.
Um and then, yes, it's a squad, but it's not generic. Like I don't want people to conflate generic with squad. That's like almost offensive to my like soul because, I've never been on a generic plan with Purple Patch. Like, I have a baseline plan when I don't
Yeah.
have a race and I'm trying to maintain fitness. That doesn't mean that it's, like, sitting there easy, like spinning on Netflix. It's still very purposeful. There are race builds that I drop in. Sometimes, though, like, you don't need a race build, and that's when
Yeah,
I
that's true.
consult, like, a coach, and I probably asked to speak with Brad. He's kinda been my go-to, now that he kinda knows me, and he was the one actually, like you mentioned, I shaved 30 minutes off my bike split at Oregon. So the reason that happened was a direct result of my conversation with him. And I said, "Look, this is my goal. I want to go out. I want to race this. It's in my backyard. I feel obligated to do it. But my real A race is Ironman Canada. And he said, "Okay, let's do this. You're not very confident in your bike. You know, you always feel like you leave something out there. I want you to go out and I want you to see like what you have in you. Just go out, just like give it what you have, and then see what's left in the tank for the run. And if you totally crash and burn on the run, it is what it is. You know, this is not your A race. It's fine. Like, see what that end, range is for you." And then he jokingly added, "And if you don't crash and burn, then maybe you've unlocked like some new beast mode." And I remember laughing and be like, "Great. Like he's, sentencing me out there like to die here." But I was like, "Okay, like I trust him. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go for broke." I pulled back a little in the last like 10 miles where I was
Yeah.
like, Okay, I don't actually really want to die, but I've pushed myself on the bike." And I surprised myself. I still had my run legs, and that's what put me into fourth place. And I think fourth through like seventh or eighth were all separated by like just the slimmest of slim, slim margins. So when my husband was like, "You finished fourth," I was like, "What?" like, I, of,
Yep.
of what?
Mm.
And I was like, "You must have it wrong. There's people finishing behind me. Like, it's going to go down." And I wasn't even going to stay for the award ceremony because I was like, "This can't be true." I wasn't gonna stay for the roll down, and my friend was like, "You have to, like, you're gonna qualify for a world spot." And I was like, "This is so not in my, like,
Yeah.
wheelhouse."
Ripping.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm so unfamiliar with this. So, I was like, "Oh my god." Like, I emailed Brad, like, right after, and I was like, "What the F?" Like, I think I literally just, used all the words. And, I met with him again before, Canada, and I said, "Okay, I'm on the baseline plan. Obviously, I'm dropping in a race build. I'm looking at this, and dude, I can't do this many hours a week. That's not gonna happen. Like, 7 to 8 is the best I can give you." I had been working on, like, 5 to 6, and he said, "Okay, here's how it's broken down. It's basically 3 3-week works of 3 blocks of 3 weeks,
Great.
and each
Yeah.
one is, like, stepping up. This is like the gist of it. This is like what your focus is. I need you to get these key workouts in these 3-week increments. You figure out how it works, but this is like your goal." And he didn't give me like, "This day you do this and this." He just like made me understand the concept of what I was trying to build. And then he left it to me to figure out how I did that. And so I was like, that makes so much sense. I had all this freedom to move things around, but I still felt confident that I was following a logical progression.
Yeah, it wasn't becoming random.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying hack the weeks, throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Like, you're going to get terrible results. Like, you're going to show up, you're going to be ill prepared, your body's not going to be ready. But we're not throwing spaghetti at the wall. Like, we're taking the plan and we're trying to make, like some prioritization of workouts. And that was so helpful to me. It made it so much more doable where I was like, I can train for this Ironman. I can enjoy my summer. I can not feel bad about like abandoning my family, and I can still run this business.
Mhm.
Um, and and to be fair, I was not going out trying to qualify for Kona. Like, it had been 5 years since my last Ironman, and I was like very worried I didn't have it in me. I, like, told my husband, I said, "What if the magic is gone? Like, what if I can't finish this distance anymore?" And he's like, "I think that's not true." But I was like, "COVID has happened. I've had 2 kids. I've been out of the game doing, like, shorter races. Like, what if I just don't have it?" And, you know, I was thrilled with my race. So, I don't know, like, you stick with it and you, like, stack the bricks and it works. And so I put a lot of trust, I think, in the program and in the squad. I've thought, like, one-to-one coaching would be fun, but quite honestly, like, I don't have time to talk to somebody every day. Like,
Yeah.
I don't really want the feedback every day because I don't have time to process
You
it.
don't have to, yeah, exactly, don't so I want to, I mean, firstly, and you got very busy weeks, and I'm highly cognizant of it, and I'd love to invite you back, and I'm gonna invite you back publicly, so you can't turn me down,
Oh,
but it
good.
doesn't have to be in the coming weeks. But I want to explore a whole 'nother side of this as we have this conversation of the impact of this on your broader life, and how this journey has fueled other parts of your life. And in a second conversation, if and when you're available, I say that knowing that I just threw you under the bus, but I'm cognizant of your time as well. So I do want to just I just want to finish the conversation with one question to finish, which is, I think a lot of folks that have listened to your great case study, your perspective, and are probably inspired. If you had to distill it all down, what would you offer up from Stephanie's perspective of the 1 to 2 actions that someone that's inspired right now to maybe start their journey or shift their approach to their journey to help them be successful, to move towards their goals? What would be your 1 or 2 pieces of advice?
Um, I think number 1 is to, like, think of it as, like a commitment to yourself. Like, you're not
Mhm.
committing to a race, right? Like, maybe the race gets canceled. Maybe for some reason, like, you're sick and you don't do it. Like, don't think of it as, like, this one event and it's like a one and done thing, which was kind of how when I started, it was like, I just want to do this one thing, check it off the list, and then be done. I think that the value of it comes from saying, like, I'm committing to this for myself. And in the process, I'm going to benefit from it, right? Like the race is a byproduct. It's like a celebration of the work you did to get there. But in preparing for it, like you're carving out time for like your own mental health. You're carving out time to get, your own exercise in. You're carving out time to kind of have your own like zen or clarity. I think that that's a really important like mindset to take on. This is not like a, oh my god, I just added more to my plate. This is really like a, okay, this is where I get to like balance all those other external things that like are laid upon me during the day or during the week or during the month that I can't control. Like this is the part of my life that I can control, and I can layer it in there so that it really like adds to what else I have. And for me, that's it can add to my patience, right? It adds to my
Mhm.
patience bank. And it just I don't like meditate, but that is the closest I get to meditating.
Yeah.
Is having that time to just exercise. I think the other thing is it's really daunting to start. Like you just kind of look at it and you're like, I have no idea. Like, does that mean I go out and like run today and bike tomorrow? And like, then how far do I swim? Reach out to somebody who knows what they're doing. Like, ask a coach. Like,
Mm.
leverage somebody else's expertise. Like, make them do the research, make them understand how these things fit together. Like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel for yourself. Like,
Yeah.
you know, ask for help. So, whether that's the coach you have now or if you're looking for a program, like, find somebody who can give you the resource and not the generic I downloaded this from the internet plan, right? Like
Yeah. It's not gonna help.
it's not applicable to you.
Yeah.
Like, you could take Lucy Charles Barkley's plan and say, "Okay, this is the ideal plan," and you're like, "Well, I think we all know at that extreme that's not true." So if you scaled everything down, it still wouldn't be true for you. I think finding that fit and knowing who can give that to you, it's like, this is for you on a platter, right? And then you figure out where you wanna layer it in. So I think, yeah, making that commitment, like really knowing that you're doing this for yourself, and that you're benefiting from it like every step of the way as a long-term investment. And then it can be really fun. It can be really rewarding, in
Okay.
seeing those incremental changes, right? I didn't go overnight from dropping an hour off my marathon time, and nor did I start thinking my goal is to drop an hour off my marathon time. For me, it's
Mhm.
really just like this is something where I see improvement and I can just keep setting goals for myself, right? Like um and so I think those are important things to value for your own life, right? Like those are important to take away and to make you better at work and to make you better for your family, your partner, or just like your own mental balance. Uh,
Yeah.
I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to read the news. I just need to go like exercise before I'm in a mindset to absorb whatever is going on. So, but yeah, but ask for help, ask for
Ask for
help.
help. You mentioned something there that's really important, fun. It makes it more fun when you're, turns out winning, and I don't mean winning as the first across the finish line, but winning at this is really fun and fulfilling. I've been trying to think how to encapsulate and to wrap up, this show and give listeners a little coaching perspective for me, and here's how I'm gonna do it. For for several years, I coached an athlete that you mentioned earlier, Sami Inkanen, who was so instrumental to me as a coach early on. We had a big optimization challenge. He's an amazing human being. He's a wonderful athlete. And we went on a 5-year journey where we weren't really learned a lot from each other. He had, similar to you, just almost seemingly insurmountable challenges uh, from a time constraint and demand and everything else. And he also had lofty ambitions. And we tested and we prodded and we proved and we ended up creating a solution for him that was fantastic. And through that, forevermore in my coaching career, he's sort of one of my athletes that I look back on, and I'll remove all of the pro athletes, but he's one of the amateur athletes that was such a huge cog in my development as a coach. And I've often wondered whether I would ever meet anyone that would stand up side by side, shoulder to shoulder with Sami, and and I have. I've just spent an hour with her, and you're exceptional, and I just want to thank you for being a part of Purple Patch, and I wish you the best of luck. I look forward to part two, but you are a purple patch athlete, and I'm really, really proud of what you've accomplished, and I really thank you for being such an active part of the program, and thank you for your time today, because as the listeners know, you are very time starved, and you just spent an hour with me. So thank you very, very much, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Matt. That means a lot to me.
Fantastic. Thank you. Guys, thanks so much for joining, and thank you for listening. I hope that you enjoyed the new format. You can never miss an episode by simply subscribing. Head to the Purple Patch channel of YouTube and you will find it there and you could subscribe. Of course, I'd like to ask you, if you will subscribe, also share it with your friends, and it's really helpful if you leave a nice positive review in the comments. Now, any questions that you have, let me know. Feel free to add a comment and I will try my best to respond and support you on your performance journey. And in fact, as we commence this video podcast experience, if you have any feedback at all, as mentioned earlier in the show, we would love your help in helping us to improve. Simply email us at info@purplepatchfitness.com or leave it in the comments of the show at the Purple Patch page, and we will get you dialed in. We'd love constructive feedback. We are in a growth mindset, as we like to call it. And so feel free to share with your friends. But as I said, let's build this together. Let's make it something special. It's really fun. We're really trying hard to make it a special experience, and we want to welcome you into the Purple Patch community. With that, I hope you have a great week. Stay healthy, have fun, keep smiling, doing whatever you do. Take care.